Your recording is live.
And so today we're going to talk about the new releases going out on Friday today. And I've also put down some feedback items. One of the things that we've been asking you folks to do for a while now is send us your feedback items so that we can collect those, get those on the record, and so that we can get that into the enhancement somewhere down the line here and get that taken care of. And of course, questions and answers that you might have regarding anything that's going on with campus that we can help assist you with. So for right now, our most current release is going to include fixing an error that we had with submitting the RCR form. We had a situation in which the person would go through, select all the right items, provide all the right information, and in their attempt to file the RCR form, they received an error message that said, hey, you have an error while submitting your registration. Well, of course, registration has nothing to do with your rehab consultation, so that's now fixed. Also, too, we had some situations in which when an R2 form was submitted, that the R2 file date on your dashboard did not display. So we've got that fixed, and that should be all now displaying the date that you submitted. We also had a situation in which, and maybe this is a little bit more on our end, that we found that support staff at QRC firms were being assigned QRC registration numbers, which of course got our registration specialists a little excited. So we've got that part corrected. The data entry entered onto R3 forms. We had a situation in which when we were saving the R3s as a draft, that upon retrieval, we found that the data that had been entered previously was lost, causing the person to have to go ahead and enter all that information in again. So now we have it set up that if you save the form as a draft, anything that you entered should reappear. If for some reason that we run into this problem again, please let us know right away so we can jump on that. Also, when filing the R3 in conjunction as a plan progress report, we found that while the R3 date was displaying, it was not indicating that the R3 being used as a plan progress report was displayed on the dashboard. So if the PPR is filed at 6 months post the R2 being filed, it should display in both areas as the R3 being filed on that particular date and as the PPR being filed on that date. And that's what we have for that. As far as the feedback items, let's see here. Tom just had some kind of a question on there. Can somebody read that for me? I missed it. Did you
Tom
see?
says, he says, I just had a PPR draft that disappeared and I had to re-enter the data.
Okay. If that, I'm wondering if that was listed as a bug. Tom, why don't you and I, after this meeting, let's take a look at that situation. We'll do a Teams meeting and see if there's something we can do, or if it needs to be written up as a bug. Could be already done. Anyways, one of the things that I was saying before that was we asked everybody to be sending in their comments on things that they would like to see done with campus, just to make your jobs a lot easier, more efficient, save you some money, time and cost. So one of the first ones that we had here was that under the document types, the tab listed about 50 different descriptions. And it was requested that this be reduced to the ones that the QRCs actually use, like initial evaluation report with the R2, those types of things, versus all the other stuff that we have set up for the insurers that are involved, the attorneys that are involved, just making it a little bit more specific to our group. The second one, rehabilitation files created on a claim shell don't list the employee's name, just a number. And it was requested the claim shell RT numbers list the injured workers' names both on the RT file and on the R forms, because what was happening was just a number was given which left you to guessing as to who was that for, and then having to open up those particular documents just to figure out who was who. And if you had a number of those kinds of files, that was a time consumer. That closed rehabilitation files would either drop off at the end from the My Rehab Cases tab, or be moved to a closed Rehab Cases tab. That way you're only dealing with the active ones when you're dealing with the My Rehab cases. The fourth, of course, was the change of QRC process and filing. The R3 in conjunction with the PPR does not work for group administrators, but only for the QRCs. And especially the larger firms who have administrative staff wanted the ability to be able to do that work for the QRCs, so the QRCs could be out in the field serving the injured workers. And so we certainly have listed that as a high priority for you folks. The next one was, it would be great if after we went into the My Rehab Cases tab and then worked the rehabilitation file, that the order we filtered the files in the My Rehab Cases tab remained as it had been organized. Because what was found, of course, is once you went into the file and then went back into your dashboard, then everything had to be refiltered all over again. Again, a time consumer. So we've got that listed as a feedback enhancement. When going to a rehab file and submitting a filing or other, once you go back to the main screen to go to another injured workers file, it defaults back to the cases being in random order, causing time to be wasted. So again, the idea that if things, if your files are in alphabetical order, you should be able to just go back to that versus having to go into John Jones up here and Bill Smith someplace else. The last one here was when an R3 is filed to indicate a change of QRC, that the rehab firm associated with the claim would automatically change within the claim. So if you had a change of QRC from the XYZ QRC firm to yourself, Hill Rehabilitation Incorporated, that on your dashboard it would now reflect Hill Rehabilitation Incorporated versus the previous firm, and that makes sense. Next one, while logged into the QRC dashboard, every time I go back and forth between screens, the cases need to be reloaded and default to the filter of the cases. This is somewhat like the last one, so I guess it's just a rephrasing of that. Can there be an autosave function put in place while working on R forms every so many minutes? So if for something should happen that you don't lose any data that has been entered, certainly makes sense. Next one, I would recommend that closed cases fall off for campus rehab files after 30 days post-closure. If necessary, a link to closed cases could be created. This would help decrease the list of files on the campus page and save QRC time and money from filtering out the cases. Well, at some point, I think we'll probably just have to have the QRC groups figure out what we want to do with those closed files. Do we want to have them stay in the My Rehab Cases tab? Do we want to create a new tab for them to go into? Do we want them to go away completely and somehow create a new link, which I think would be really difficult? But maybe we can get some more opinions on that. The next one, find a way to skip the affidavit of service page that seems to attach to everything. Next one, is there any way that we can complete all the required R forms prior to the consultation? This QRC like to bring the consultation report, rights and responsibilities form, and the R2 to the initial meeting. I am assuming that she was figuring the person by way of their condition and what she knew about the particular work requirements was going to be qualified right off the bat. She didn't want to have to wait until after the RCR was submitted to be able to begin to work on like
Mike,
the
I'm sorry to
R2.
interrupt you, but people are, Anthony Leland just messaged that they're having a problem hearing you.
Oh, I don't know how to further increase my volume except maybe just talk louder. Does that help at all?
Amy says her fine is fine. She's fine. She's fine. It might be just Anthony's.
Okay. All right. Well, and I apologize. We should always figure out a better way for communications. The next one I have, of course, is the language on the prompts is confusing. It would be helpful if plain language was used, such as if you hit enter rather than use the next button, or use the word file on the button instead of submit. And we certainly have talked to them about that. I would say that being able to access R-form drafts and edit between the QRC and the support staff would be my highest priority. Again, and that's where the QRC might start off the R form, but administrative staff goes in and finishes the form for the QRC. Right now, as you might know, that's not possible. So to be able to have that interchange and just make the process a lot more efficient certainly makes sense, and we've got that entered as a feedback item. Rehab cases not being linked to a file because the insurer has not filed a first report of injury, which slows down the QRC's workflow. They can't move ahead with R3 filings for a change of QRC. And that was one of these interesting things. When we were looking at this problem, we set it up so that somebody who was filing in a claim shell, an RCR, they could go ahead and do the R2. But after that, they're not able to do a R3 until such time as the first report of injury is filed. And we'd like to be able to have that availability that they can file the R3 and just essentially make the system a lot more efficient that way. No timely communication. This was from one of the firms saying, hey, we want to know if there's something going on that's a problem with the system. So send out some type of flash email to all the QRCs and if possible, give an estimated time for the fix and final notice that the system is now working. Currently right now, it's been a little bit difficult, quite frankly, because we're not only serving the QRCs, we're serving the insurers, the attorneys, we've got some healthcare providers that are thrown in there who are trying to get bills paid and that type of thing. And we're just trying to get the system up, working on its own, and hopefully, knock on wood, um, when most of those bugs are worked out, things will be working a lot more smoother. And I hope that you've seen that as the time has gone, that there's less problems and things are working a little bit more efficiently. But the idea of sending out a notice, if it's going to be take a time, that certainly makes sense. The one thing I've been hoping for, that this would be less environmentally damaging by not having to print and send out all of this paperwork, but that hope has also been destroyed. That you can't even have a simple way for claimants to sign this electronically is mind-blowing. Obviously, it makes sense to cut down on paperwork. I'm not sure how they'll do that, but we've got that in as a feedback request. Next one, whenever the QRC firm either creates or submits a document to you, we receive an email from you, DLI, confirming that you received the document. And you give that form submission confirmation email a number. When I go to the document file for the client, there is no document with that form submission confirmation number. It would cause less confusion and certainly be significantly more helpful to us if you replaced your form submission confirmation number with the document ID number. So the one that you found in your Forms tab, that makes sense, which is clearly listed. Therefore, we could reference the document ID number to identify specifically to which document your form submission confirmation number is referenced. It's a really good suggestion. I like that.
Can I just pinch in right there real
Yes.
quick? And I will say that OAH does the same thing. When you submit something to OAH, this is Darcy at VRU. I'm the state program administrator and I file interventions. Um, and used to be the rehab registration specialist. Many of you know me. But I just want to comment on that because OAH does the same thing. They give you a submission number and not a document number that you had entered. So it kind of aligns with that. And I don't know if that'll ever be fixed, but that's just kind of, I agree with everybody. It would be easier if it were a document number versus a submission number, but it's kind of the way that companies are doing it these days that
Hmm,
I'm seeing.
that is interesting. Thank you for the input. I like that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Let's see, we save your form submission confirmation emails in the client files, and it would save us considerable time if you would use the document ID number to identify. Okay, so basically the same thing. Occasionally you've used the RT number, which is not convenient, to quickly identify the specific document related to your confirmation email. Therefore, please use the document ID number when sending your form submission confirmation emails. Okay. Something to look at. Some type of hint as to what is wrong with the R form. I'm assuming this is actually when you're doing the work and inputting the data, and it won't allow you to submit the form. Yeah, so we can't go to the next page or submission instead of having to search. So tell you what's wrong instead I have to make you go through the form completely to figure out what is wrong with it. Certainly makes sense to save time. Feedback items from vendors. That vendors should be equally recognized in campus as they are in the statutes with QRCs. The question is, when will they have access? Will there be any training for placement vendors in campus? And as we're working on that problem and get campus to that point, yes, there will be some type of training that's involved. It's just a matter of when we get that up and running. When will vendors be able to renew their annual registration using campus? I know that we've been working on that problem very actively, and I guess I have to admit that I'm not sure where we're at, if that problem's been solved or not. Have you heard anything, Darcy?
Not in regards to placement vendors. I saw that Mona was on here earlier. I don't know if she could speak to it or if she or Mike Hare knows anything. Um, but I have not heard anything on that.
Okay, Mike, Mona, anything to add on that? I haven't seen anything that's in place as yet.
I don't have any updates, Mike.
Okay, okay. Last thing is, can you confirm when placement vendors will have access to WorkComp campus system to file a rehab request for assistance, R forms reports filed by QRCs to be able to see them, notifications of conferences, notice of intentions to discontinue workers' compensation benefits, able to file motions to intervene. We're working on that piece too. I have not heard where we're at with that. But again, we've put it as a feedback item to get that into place in campus. So, oh, and I did see here. So I have any. I did have another feedback item that I forgot to add into the feedback items list for QRCs and vendors in general. When DLI discontinued the current database system, what ended up was is that the spreadsheets on the department's website for QRC information, QRC firm, vendor information was no longer being updated. So when you renewed your registrations, that wasn't noted. If last names changed, if you moved, all of that. So the decision was made to take it off DLI's website since the information was no longer accurate. The feedback item for a high priority to get it is to get campus to go ahead and put essentially the same system back into place. So when the registration specialist updates any of your information, that will have spreadsheets that will automatically update again on DLI's website. So that was a feedback item, and I didn't get a chance to add that to it. But just so that you know, we are hearing that it's important because we've been contacted by QRCs, attorneys, insurers saying, where's those lists? General campus information, of course. The fixes that we put into place, of course, which we've already talked about at the earlier portion of today. And the section that I like, which is kind of the how-to areas, is the frequently asked questions and answers. And always just a reminder to make sure that you're signed up for all of DLI's email updates so that you know what's going on. My last section here is for questions. Is there any questions that you have about today or something that's going on campus or something else that we can do to help?
You have one thing from Tom that says, I have had a number of files in which the Froy has not been filed in a timely manner, and he had to file his RCR and R2 in the claim shell. He's had 2 file claim shells now. One is close to 2 months since the RCR was filed, and the other is approaching 3 months since the RCR was filed. He's concerned about how to file the R3 since it seems that the insurers are not doing their jobs. He says he understands the department follows up with the insurers to get the FROIs filed. What has been what has been the compliance with this process? How are penalties and how have they been assessed for insurers that have not filed their FROIs?
You know, Tom, that is a really great question. There's another section of our department or unit that handles that. So I don't know what the actual compliance is on DLI's requests that they get those filed and the issuing of penalties. But let me follow up on that, and I will try to get back to you with an answer.
Okay, then I had put in the link to the campus updates for everybody so they know where to get the campus updates, which you had in your slides, your slides.
Okay.
And then it looks like Bobby has a question. There's no longer an online list of QRCs and rehab providers. However, the RCR, R&R references EE can be found online with recent changes of QRC was also unable to find contact information on it. Okay, so for those of you that are on the call, if you go to advanced search in campus and under entities, go down to QRCs and you select search, you'll get all QRCs on there. Just as an FYI, that's where everybody, and that'll be the latest information because you guys make those changes on your end. That's my understanding. So I hope that helps in solving that problem. And I don't know if Mike has anything to add to that. Julie says that she has an R8 that needs to be filed. We closed our case in February. The insurer never filed the FROI, so there's no claim attached to our case. How does she file the R8?
And the answer is you can't. So what we need to do is we need to double back. Julia, send me information on that. Um, you know, whatever RT information that you have, claim information, all of that, or you can give me a call, of course. And let's figure out that piece so that we can make sure that we follow up with the insurer to get that done, because obviously you haven't been able to file any of your forms, or they're out there still in limbo from the time that we did the initial migration. Hopefully you've written a ticket on that, and we can also reference that when you and I talk.
Okay,
So
then Bobby says she has files online that are still listed as open. However, she has filed an R8 to close several months ago. The majority of her files are listed closed once she files the R8. Okay, hold on. I have files online that are still listed open. However, I filed R8 to close months ago. The majority of my files list closed once I file R8, question mark.
you know, I do know that one of the things with campus is that a lot of the quote unquote claims remain open while the QRC has closed their file. So the two are kind of an apples and oranges thing, where the insurer may close their file immediately after you filed your R8. But if the claim is still open and active, it may still be registered as being open. So the fact that you filed the R8 should be just good enough for you. Don't worry about it. Move on to the next claim that you need to work on.
Okay, so the next question is from Anna, and she asks, in the scenario where a QRC has left the field and the injured worker is not responsive in order to obtain the signed claim authorization in R3 for the change of QRC, how do you recommend filing the R8 or unable to locate the injured worker?
Okay, so let me play this back so I've got it straight in my mind. I've got a QRC that was working for Hill Incorporated Rehab, and they were serving an injured worker. Excuse me, I gotta clear my voice. Um, the QRC working for me left the firm, and in our attempts to go ahead and do a transfer of QRC so we could continue to provide services, we haven't been able to be in contact with the employee. You know, the first thing we normally do is we say, go ahead and contact the employee, send out a registered letter and say, hey, so-and-so has left the field. We've been asked to go to take over your case, provide services to, facilitate your return to suitable gainful employment. Please get back to us. I'm sure you've probably done that already, but if you haven't, do that so you've got some documentation that you've kind of leaped tall buildings with a single bound to do everything that you can. And if the employee still doesn't come back and respond to that inquiry, then what I guess I would suggest is contact me through the help desk, and let's work on that one together about how we might go ahead and close that file so that it works out for that, and make sure that the employees got their due process notice that they can elect to open up their case at another time if they so choose. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, Mike, we're going back to Bobby's issue in regards to the R8. And she says, but that does not solve the R&R reference to the online listing that EEs can access.
Would you state that again?
But that does not solve the R&R reference to the online listing that EE can access. So, Bobby,
Okay.
I don't know if she can come off mute and otherwise I can unmute her. Are we asking the employee to access the file?
You know,
It's Bobby.
Okay.
That was not in reference to the R8. That was in reference to that rights and responsibilities where it lists the link that the employees can access the online list that's no longer there of QRCs and vendors.
Oh, so employees can't access that. I didn't know that.
yeah, the only way that they might possibly be able to do that is if they actually have an account in campus, which most employees don't. Which we
That's
get.
actually really good to know. So, Mona, I'll double back with you so we can maybe log that as a bug.
Well, it's listed as a feedback item right now, and actually, Bobby, that very specific statement from the rights and responsibilities form is listed as a part of that bug in Jira. So yeah, absolutely, we recognize that as being a problem, and I don't know, well, there's just not a suitable workaround at this point to fix that. So we've put this on a high priority to see if we can get this one fixed sooner than later. I don't have a better
Okay,
answer
Mike,
than that.
the next question is from Amy. Will the rights and responsibilities be updated to provide the information to the employees on where to find a list of QRCs? Well,
Um,
we just discussed that, so.
yeah. Amy, again, we're trying to get this fixed so that we can actually get it into campus or through campus when Joanne does her regular updates for folks, that automatically goes on to the DLI's website. As far as changing the form, just to change it back is some use of staff time that we need to put someplace else right now.
There are no other questions at this time.
All right. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? 3 times? All right. I don't know when our next answer session is going to be, but thank you. I really do appreciate all your comments today. It's really helpful for us to know what still is a priority and where we need to go with stuff. And your questions will be looked at. That's one of the things that Darcy does, is she prints them out for me so that I know what it says and can keep track of that. So thank you all. Again, if you have any questions, you can certainly contact the help desk, contact me. You know that my email address is mike.hill@state.mn.us. All right.
You're a
Thank you.
glutton for punishment, Mike. Now they're all going to send you emails.
Oh yeah, that's darcy.wing
No,
at.
stop, stop.
All right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all.